back to my channel, guys. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. It's a little bit of a part 2 because I am talking about the slipcover I made for my Fantastic Furniture Jazz 2-seater sofa, and that's pretty much what it's about, is a pattern for that particular sofa, because I don't know whether the sofa's available overseas. I think it's more of an Australian franchise, Fantastic Furniture. So, I mean, it's not going to suit everyone watching this. If you go back to the video that I put up originally, you will get an idea though of the basic concept of what I did. So I actually made a pattern by looking at the seams that were sort of running through the couch and measuring those. Originally I was going to just drape the fabric over it, make a pattern that way, and it took me a long time to even figure out or even get the courage to do it, because I was sort of dreading it actually. But I made the decision to make a pattern for it, no matter how long it actually took, that I'm going to make a pattern, that I've got the pattern, so that when I want to make other covers for it, like maybe out of different fabric, it will be easy. You know, half the battle is measuring it. So I've got the pattern there. But I thought, for those people who have watched the video and thought, I have that couch, I would love to do that too. Well, I will give you the pattern for it and I'll give you all the measurements. I did actually go through and check that the measurements were right. There are a few things off that I mismeasured that I wrote down. I mean, they were right on the actual pattern. So I've just adjusted them, and so everything's fine. So I made my slip cover out of drop cloth fabric. I actually use the Aldi drop cloth fabric. And I used 2 packets, and I'll pop it up on the screen. I think it was 2.6 meters by 3 point something meters. And I thought originally 1 packet would do for each couch. It didn't quite do. A few of the cushions I had to cut out from the other packets. So if you are covering 2 couches, you'll need 3 of these packets. If you are covering 1 couch, you'll still need 2. But there will be some left over for you to make scatter cushions and throw cushions and that sort of thing with it, which is really good. If you are going, say, to Spotlight, or if you have some fabric, upholstery fabric, or you've seen some cheap fabric that you would like to make a pattern out of, I've worked out that if it's 1.5 meter wide, which is normally the width of upholstery fabric, 1.4 to 1.5 meters, you will need, it was about 8.7, 8.6 meters, but I'm figuring if you got 10 meters, that would cover it, and that's for 1 couch. Also, that's if you're using plain fabric or a random pattern that doesn't really matter which direction it goes in. If you have a pattern that has to go in the same direction, yeah, it will be a bit more, so you just might have to maybe get another 2 meters maybe, because when you're cutting it out, you're going to have to place it differently on the fabric in a different direction, and you may use up more because of that. What I suggest when you are making your pattern is to not cut it out and measure directly on the fabric you're going to be ultimately using for your slip cover. So don't, or I mean, you could if you wanted to, but I suggest that you actually pin it onto some scrap fabric you have. You don't have to buy fabric for this necessarily. So if you have an old doona cover, old sheets, even an old blanket, something that's not stretchy or that hasn't been stretched out of shape, make a pattern from this, and then you have the pattern for the future, especially if you're making 2 sofa slip covers. You don't want to be measuring things out twice. And ultimately you'll have the pattern there for if you see some other fabric that you like, or if you just want spare covers to throw on when these are being washed, or if you want to change of home decor or something like that. Definitely make up the pattern in a scrap fabric. Another reason for this too is that you can pin it on your couch and get an idea of how it's going to go, and make sure for sure that it actually fits, because I've measured this for my sofa. This sofa is probably 3 or 4 years old, maybe even a bit older, because we bought it secondhand. So I don't know if they've actually changed the the size of the couch. I don't think so. I think they're probably the same dimensions, but even before cutting out the pattern, you could just quickly give it a measure and see if the measurements are similar. Something I didn't do, and I should have done, and I knew I should have done it, but I didn't do it, was to wash the fabric, whatever fabric it is, drop cloth or your pattern fabric, yeah, whatever it is, wash it first. I didn't. Mine actually shrunk, and luckily I was able to fit it on. I mean, I did sort of stretch it on. The fabric's not stretchy, so if you shrink cushion covers, it's a bit different because they're squishy. You can sort of manipulate it to fit. The actual structure of the couch is pretty solid, so yeah, if it shrinks too much, I wouldn't take that chance. So just throw the fabric in the wash first and let it shrink. If it shrinks subsequently when you wash it, it's not going to be much. So yeah, that's important. When you're actually cutting the fabric out too, and if you sew, I mean, you're going to know all this. If you're cutting out two pieces, don't cut out one piece and then another piece next to it. Fold the fabric so the same sides are facing each other and cut it out. Then you will have two opposite pieces, if you know what I mean. So one will go on one side and it will have to face the opposite way to go on the other. And that's an important point if you're cutting out two pieces. When I did the pattern up, I included the seam allowance. So the seam allowance for this is 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Yeah, so you just cut the pattern out with the measurements I give you, and that includes the actual seam allowance for you. When you're actually cutting out the pattern, I mean, it's obvious, I guess, but I'll just say it. If on the pattern pieces I give you, it'll say cut 1, cut 2, cut 4. When you're making the pattern, obviously just cut one of those pieces when you measure it. You don't have to cut that many for the pattern because it's just the pattern. When you're actually cutting it on your proper fabric, you'll be cutting out the extra pieces you'll need. And I just wanted to mention too that it was actually just a seat cushion. I thought it was a little bit baggy, a little bit big, and I never adjusted. I thought it's okay. If you like your cushion covers really, really tight, with no give in them, and so they look ultra neat, then you can, once you've sewn them and you've put them on, all you have to do is sew up the side seam. So you could sew up each side seam again 1 centimeter, and that will make them a little bit tighter as well. But I didn't do that. I felt I didn't need to do it, but if it's something you want to do, you could do that. I haven't actually given instructions. It's probably pretty straightforward as to what to do, but if you go back to my video, the slipcover video where I'm actually doing it, I sort of show you and tell you what I'm doing, and you can see. I'll actually pin two pieces together, then sew it, then I'll pin another piece, so I'm not pinning everything and dragging this great big cover over to the sewing machine and trying to sew it. That would be a bit hard. So I just sort of pin, sew as I go. Actually, one more important thing if you're using drop cloth fabric is once you've cut it, to either overlock or zigzag around it, because this fabric is, it just sprays really badly. The Aldi one isn't as bad as the Bunnings drop cloth fabric. That, as soon as you cut it, it just seemed to fray if you weren't touching it. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it does fray, so definitely zigzag around it so it doesn't fray. As soon as I cut it, I actually zigzagged each piece separately. So instead of sewing up the seam and then zigzagging two together, I zigzagged each piece separately, and then I knew I didn't have to worry about it at all when I was working on it. I think that's all, but if there is anything I remember after this has gone up that I've forgotten, I can always put it down in the comments. So enjoy making the cover. I hope it all works out for you really well. Remember, it's the Jazz 2-seater fantastic furniture sofa. So if you want something to protect it because you've just bought it, or you're thinking of throwing it out because it's had its day, but you want to try this and create something really new and fresh, yeah, good luck with it. And these are the pattern pieces. These are the measurements. If you want, you could just screenshot and do it that way. It's up to you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in next week's video. Bye for now.